So yeah, sprint planning definitely is the recommendation. Is there any teams here who do not have sprints with sprint planning at the beginning? Yeah? How are you guys doing it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this is why I started this, and I'll continue to say, pick and choose from this. These production processes were developed for full-time professional teams. You're in such a different situation. If this approach is working for you, then awesome. Then run with it. If you don't have these problems, don't implement this stuff. But if you are seeing issues, then again, there are these specific processes that try to address them. So yeah, this one, everyone and everything is always late. Now this is very different than some things and some people are always late. I just want to clarify. What you may have, if you are having problems where you just feel like, you know, the team is chronically late. They say they're going to do stuff and just stuff doesn't happen. This may be where you want to start writing stories and start reviewing them, you know, as a group to make sure that people understand what they're committing to and that they actually can. I'm of mixed minds about the writing of Agile stories for student groups. I kind of like the idea of you having testable outcomes to prevent that problem of somebody who just, it's not done yet. Yes, 3 years from now, it still won't be done. I understand, but we got to move on. It can help hugely with that. But again, these are pick and choose, see what works for you, see what problems you're dealing with. Do not feel compelled to implement any of these if they're not needed by your team. And yeah, I am a huge fan of a prioritized story backlog. It's one of the things that like I say, I've talked to a lot of students about. Just a really simple thing of, you know, the A, B, C with dotted lines between them, and you move things back and forth depending on what's happening with your project. That's kind of like, to me, the minimum that I would be comfortable with on a project is having a really good sense of what are the dotted lines. Where are we going to cut if we run out of time? But when I'm working on projects, I will just have, my husband just humors me with this, I'll just have this huge backlog running of everything we could possibly do. And then I have next to it in Trello the bucket of, no, we are not going to do this. And as we work, stuff starts migrating into that bucket. I don't delete it, because who knows, maybe I'll want to do it later. But it's definitely something of, it's just my personal preference of how to work. I'd rather write out a huge, like, this is everything we might possibly want to do, and then just start discarding or replacing it. You know, hey, this particular kind of opponent worked great, let's do more of those. Yeah, so this hopefully won't happen on your student teams, but when you've got a team, the largest team I worked on was 125 people. This happened a lot. I was supposed to work on this week, but I don't have the art, code, design, fill in the blank. I just remember the Matrix Online, the database stuff broke right as we were trying to start doing missions. And this is where the Scrum Master earns their pay. Is you were asking what does a Scrum Master do? This is one of the big things, is they run around and they figure out the dependencies and when they're going to get resolved. This is, again, very much an associate producer kind of task. It's do the legwork, talk to other parts of the team, figure out what we need to be doing in order to be able to continue on these tasks that we need to get done. Yeah, the doneness, the testable requirements. Yeah, I would say, I mean, sprint planning, you know, as you need it, maybe you don't, and some kind of just the daily stand-up or the meeting stand-up are kind of the, if you're going to start with anything, really recommend those. But this is how you deal with that, specifically those testable outcomes. You know, I walk up to the artifact, the following happens, so that you know when the work is done. And yeah, game development on a project that goes on for years can be frustrating and make people unhappy and be difficult. And the sprint retrospective is specifically intended to address that. With the big thing here of if people say, oh, I'm just going to pick an example, not at random, I can't get my work done because that guy doesn't show up until 10:30 every morning and I'm here at 8 in the morning and I'm blocked. We have to figure out how to solve that. So it's not just a rant session, like, oh, you know, this guy makes me crazy because he does this. It's what can we do to fix that? Specifically, a problem that I had on a fairly recent project was programmers would hit the build button and go home. And QA would come in with me at like 8 in the morning, because I'm such a morning person, and we'd be like, let's get started, and the build's broken. And now I have a full QA team sitting there going, so what should we do? And I'm like, I guess test some more on the last good build, because this one's dead. The way we fixed that is we actually implemented a rule, which is you're not allowed to hit the build button and leave. That we had a cutoff time, which I think was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that nobody could start a build after that, because it was just too painful for QA not to be able to work. So this was, again, came up in a sprint retrospective, and then we talked as a team, and we figured out that was the way to solve that. Yeah, this is again for professional teams, but I really feel, you know, start your team work sessions with this. Just have people check in and see, just say how they're doing and are there any issues. Could save you a huge amount of grief. And this is the, again, the Scrum Master role is making sure that everybody is doing okay. It is very easy for somebody to say, oh yeah, changes to the physics engine, I got it, and dig themselves in deep and just not be able to deal with it. They may need somebody who's like, hey, you know, can I get you help on this? So that would be part of the Scrum Master role on a team. And I think that's, yeah. So take what you need. Don't do what you don't. Your student teams, choose appropriately. But like I say, I blog about this. If you are applying for a production internship, I would recommend you read my Young Scrum Masters Guide, just because that very well may be what you're doing if you get taken into a company. I specifically wrote that for a student who last summer did a Scrum Master internship, and it was just like, I don't know where to start, and I'm like, let me write this out for you. I love talking about this stuff, so please come talk about it anytime. I have a lot of friends who do this kind of approach to production, Chris Vanover being one. I'm hoping we can bring in my personal Agile mentor, Kristen Overton, for one of these talks. The next one, Alan, we talked about was Agile stories. So that'll be more in-depth about writing stories. Like I say, may not be applicable to you now, but hopefully could be useful later. And I think that's it. Yep. All right, other questions or anything? Oh, you guys don't need to. Applaud the guest speakers. How about that? When I drag my friends in here, please applaud for them. If any other questions on this or anything? I know it's kind of a lot to take in, but I do think it is likely you will encounter this at studios you work at, so it is good to get up to speed on it. Yeah, what was it? Sound. So that's actually the question I would answer is how do you approach this with content creators overall? It's the exact same sort of thing. You bet. You come up with, as the player, I want a cool and exciting background theme that makes the game exciting and fun.